Hi and welcome to the latest episode of the Reynolds podcast. I'm just recording a little bit of an intro just to update you. This podcast, which is a David Bowie special with my friend Quentin John Burton, QJB, was recorded nearly 6 months ago now. If you've been following my podcast, you may have noticed that I have not posted one in a very long time. Extremely kind of turbulent personal circumstances have meant that I have been unable to do a lot of creative work over the last 6 months, but I am back now. Today is January the 8th, which is David Bowie's birthday, so I thought this would be a great day to put the podcast out. And of course, he passed away on the 10th of January in 2 days' time. So thought this was the ideal time to do it. I also just wanted to dedicate this podcast to my late cousin and very old dear friend, Richard Purvis, who, like myself, was a massive David Bowie fan. I know he would have enjoyed listening to this, and we used to spend hours just listening to David Bowie, watching concert DVDs of Bowie. We went to some Bowie tribute concerts together and watched some cover bands, things like that. Miss him very, very much. And so I want to dedicate this one to you, Rich, and of course to David Bowie himself. May you both rest in peace. Welcome to episode 8 of the MJ Reynolds podcast. Today I'm very, very happy to have artist-songwriter Quentin John Burton, otherwise known as QJB, with me. And it's a very, very special episode for both of us today, because we're going to talk about our all-time favourite artist, the one and only David Bowie. Welcome, Q.
Great.
Good to have you here.
Matt, I'm delighted to be invited, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely no problem. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. Well, a few months, because you are now off abroad.
I live in Spain at the moment, yes.
Expat.
Most of the time. We don't call ourselves that.
Oh, no.
We're immigrants.
There we go, yeah. So, what we do, each episode, we take one artist that we both love, and we discuss all our favourite songs, we talk about our history with the artist, and then we try and do a little section that I like to call In Defence Of, where we take maybe less critically acclaimed parts of their career and try to say something nice about it, because in the world of chaos that we live in, the land of confusion, why not be nice and try and say something nice? But that's for later. So first of all, just going to read out a short biography, just off Wikipedia. So if in the highly unlikely event you don't know who David Bowie is, then here we go. We are in TikTok land, we're live, so I'm sure some of you youngsters out there probably aren't too familiar with Bowie's work. So here we go. David Robert Jones, known professionally as David Bowie, was an English singer-songwriter and actor. A leading figure in the music industry, he is regarded as one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century. Bowie was acclaimed by critics and musicians, particularly for his innovative work during the 1970s. His career was marked by reinvention and visual presentation, and his music and stagecraft had a significant impact on popular music. During his lifetime, his record sales, estimated at over 100 million records worldwide, made him one of the best-selling musicians of all time. In the UK, he was awarded 10 platinum, 11 gold and 8 silver album certifications, and received 11 number one albums. In the US, he received 5 platinum and 9 gold certifications. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996. Rolling Stone named him among the greatest artists in history, and after his death, the greatest rock star ever. In 2022, Bowie was announced as the best-selling vinyl artist of the 21st century. So there we go, very, very short, very truncated for an amazing, illustrious career, but we're going to keep that bit a little bit short just because it's more fun to talk about our own personal feelings rather than citations from Wikipedia, shall we say. So, first of all, how we know each other. So I reckon it's well over 10 years now, isn't it? Maybe. Yeah, a long time.
Yes, it's a long time.
So Q was running Songsmith, I should say, which was a showcase for artists, songwriters, poems, anything you want, in Bristol, where we both kind of, I wouldn't say originate, but both largely have hung out for a very, very long time. And I came up, I think, was I solo the first time I came up? I was, wasn't I? Yeah. And so we became friends through that, and have been ever since. We've been working on some of your music together, haven't we? I've been recording, producing some of your music. You got any memories of us meeting? I can't remember exactly when it was or what it was.
If I'd done my research, I could tell you exactly the date and how many
Oh,
people
wow.
you bought and who was on the bill.
You've still got all that.
Maybe I'll do that for the second half. And yeah, I just remember being very impressed with your songwriting, and well, you have, I think, one of the best male voices in my peer group. If I dare even include you in my peer group.
Of course you can.
The local, the Bristol scene.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
And very impressed. Some of your writing was really top notch, and I know that you've sort of dipped in and out, and you're now back writing, and I think personally that's your strength, and that my memory is just thinking, wow. And of course, what a nice chap he was.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mean, the current version is.
Yeah, gone to my head.
Yeah, it's gone to my head. He's got about way out of his station to station.
Oh, nice.
Little bojo there for you. Get them in early. No, I just remember warming to you and warming to your music, and you being a notch above a lot of the people. I mean, everyone. Was always very keen and enthusiastic. That professionals, and rather than semi-pros or amateurs, they made up a lot of it, and you were just going around, oh, okay, right, if something comes up, this is one of the guys to book. That's what my memories.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I just remember, getting a fantastic welcome at Mr. Wolf's. I used to love your big speeches before all the acts.
you were in a minority. I remember getting came like, get on with it, get up.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. No, I loved it. I thought it was very unique because again, I haven't heard a lot of people do that. Yeah, it was lovely. I thought it was just a really nice kind of segue into having all the music. You can talk a bit about current events, what was happening in your life, what was happening in the world at the time, and yeah, I thought this is brilliant, and it was a wonderful venue, really great people, and yeah, not been for a while. Obviously, it doesn't run there anymore, does it? You've moved global now, haven't you?
The globe is a little tongue in cheek. It's early to get satirical, so I won't. Yeah, when the pandemic struck, it was on its last sort of hurrah. Anyway, I won't say its last legs. It had run its course. I wasn't enjoying it as much anymore. It's a lot of hard work because I used to book 3 acts every week, pretty much, of the year, and it just became a lot of work. There's not a lot of money in promoting, unless you're really, really, really good at it, and I'm not. So I love doing it. I'm eternally grateful to Mr. Wolves, both the person and the establishment, and it just, after about 12, 13 years, it became time to move on.
Yeah,
and I think for them as well. So, yeah, and I don't really run any events anymore.
Yeah.
Having said that, I am playing at one of my own events next week, but we'll say there's a lot of shameless plug, so I'll leave it till then.
That's all good, right? Yeah, so I think, I can't promote either. I mean, well, not that you can't promote, but I cannot promote at all. I've tried. I'm currently curating a lineup for Winterfest in Clevedon next year, and that is already completely overwhelming my brain because I've got so many acts emailing me going, "Can I play?" I'm like, "Yes, you can." Trying to get them, all on the right time slots and stuff. So yeah, that's just a small taste for me.
That's why I thought I'd wait and lobby you in person.
Yes, yeah. Yes, brilliant.
Squeeze me gently by the throat.
Right. I guess it's time to talk about what we came here to discuss, which is the man himself, David Bowie. So we're going to talk first, before we go into our favourite songs and songs that mean the most to us, for whatever reason that may be, we're going to talk a little bit about our history with David Bowie. Now, you're a little bit older than me, no shade, a little bit. And you're my guest, so we're going to go with you first, because I would assume that you've been into Bowie a lot longer than I have. So yeah, take it away, your earliest memories of Bowie and how you kind of progressed into the uber fan you are today.
My earliest memory of Bowie, I don't have a great memory for order of events. I'm not one of those people that can tell you what I was wearing on at any particular time, although occasionally. And I suppose that my memory is of seeing him perform Starman on Top of the Pops.
Right, yeah.
And just being very kind of blown away. And my dad's sitting there going, "Oh, look, it's ridiculous. It's got an earring on." I'm going, "Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, this is what it's about. Rebel, rebel." And the interaction between him and Ronson, and just the whole otherness, the strangeness, was very into science fiction, and he was not of this world. I had to pick someone, so I found on you. And after that, I have an older brother who wasn't living with us at the time. He came back to visit though, and he went to our local record shop, Radio House, in Amersham, Buckinghamshire, and he bought Roxy Music first album.
Okay,
Say.
Fantastic.
And I was sort of 12, 13, whatever I was at that, whenever it came out. And I just remember listening to this music, and it just, both albums blew my mind away. What is going on here? It was nothing like, it wasn't like anything I'd heard. And just falling in love with it. And my brother got my mum to give him a Bowie haircut, and I of course wanted a Bowie haircut.
That's brilliant.
And of course, if he wears an earring, I'm walking on the other side of the street for him. And my dad was lovely, but he wasn't a music fan of the 70s. But he was very influential in getting me into music. And part of the Bowie thing was that he just is so eclectic. And my dad had huge variation in tastes.
Yeah, that's great.
Introduced me to Motown. So that's my earliest memories. Starman, Aladdin Sane.
Brilliant. Fantastic. In terms of your progression then into being like an uber fan, shall we say, because you're, what we haven't mentioned yet is you are, and again shameless plugs later, but you are in a Bowie band as well.
Yes.
We won't call it a tribute band, we don't call it that, do we? No, we do not.
It's a covers band called The Genius of David Bowie.
Yeah, so we'll definitely talk more about that later. So how did you decide that was what you wanted to do? I know that's obviously a lot more recent, we're jumping forward a bit now, but when did the idea come about that you wanted to then form a band around his music?
Not till after he died, really, because I think while you could go and see the original artist, there's not a lot of point in people like me getting up and doing. I mean, I used to play some of his songs, and I've played at nights where his songs were featured. The big thing for me with his music was the first gig I ever did. Was a party when I was a teenager, and the first song I played was Driving Saturday.
Fantastic.
And just the idea of playing his music, and because once you discover an artist who has a history as well as a future, I then went back through Ziggy Stardust, Hunky Dory. I went back in reverse chronological order, getting into the various albums and their different ways, and then my album started to come out. So the next one, Pinups, was a bit of a disappointment because it was all covers and it was a contractual obligation as I understand it. But then Diamond Dogs. Dogs was the album I wore out, and that's how I really got into it. And it inspired me to play and write my own songs. It inspired me to, well, I say, it's not tongue-in-cheek, save my life, because, you know, that sort of vulnerable age, 13, 14, you don't know what weighs up, you don't know what you're feeling, you don't understand it, and music makes sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gives an expression for your feelings, and that's why I continue to be involved in it.
Well, I think normally I would carry on with my history, which I'm going to do in a bit, but I think I'm going to break from tradition a little bit because I know we're both very passionate, and also you're very articulate and eloquent as well, so we're going to do a lot of talking today. Yeah. So I think time to interject a song, and I think Driving Saturday would be a good start. It's one of your picks, isn't it? So if that's one of the ones, the formative ones, then there we go. So without further ado, this is Drive-In Saturday by David Bowie. Right, so you have just heard Drive-In Saturday. That is one of my special guest, Quentin John Burton's picks for today. Right, so my history with David Bowie. I remember very, very well what the first Bowie song I heard was. And this, yet again, as I say, every single episode is going to be a callback to a lot of my first memories for a lot of artists, which was when I was probably around 10, I would say 10 or 11. My dad won the pools, he won 10 grand, and he bought a camper van, and we went all around just on holiday everywhere. And we had a mixtape in the car, good old cassette. And that's where almost all of my music education came from. So it had everything. It had the Police, it had Guns N' Roses, the Beatles, and David Bowie. And the song was Changes, and I'd never heard anything like it at all. And again, then I wasn't really... My musical taste hadn't formed yet. I was still very, in a very early stage of that. But it definitely was very striking to me. And I became a fan from then, really. And the main song that really turned me from, oh, this is interesting, to wow, was Life on Mars, which... when I was 15, my parents split up and my dad moved into a little cottage on his own, and I'd go over and stay with him there, and he played me Hunky Dory in full, and he's like, you've got to hear this album, and I was just blown away. And I mean, to this day, it is probably my joint favourite Bowie album with Station to Station, I would say. But again, as I'm sure it was the same with you, it does change all the time. And I just remember it was obviously a very lonely time for him, a very difficult time for all of us as a family, and so that was a nice bonding session for us. My dad's a musician as well, very, very, very talented guitarist. And yeah, so he introduced me to a lot of music, and that song still just sounds like nothing else, even today. It's just so many chords, the beautiful orchestral arrangements in it, the lyrics, the very abstract lyrics. It's just a very, very emotional song, as a lot of the picks that I've chosen are, for various reasons. And so from there, I just devoured absolutely everything I could with Bowie. And the first Bowie album that came out while I was a fan was Earthling, which is certainly not his strongest album, but because I was in that formative teenage stage by then, I think it was 99, wasn't it? I want to say 99, maybe 98? 97, wow. God, time flies, doesn't it? I think you're right. Yeah, no, you are right. Yeah, because ours was 99, wasn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, I would have been 14, 15, I think. So it's around the same time as listening to Hunky Dory. And obviously, it was so different, all that kind of jungle and drum and bass and electronica on that album. I was like, oh my God, this guy does like everything, And that obviously is a massive strength of Bowie's throughout his entire career, just reinventing himself all the time. And I don't think anybody's really done it as well as him. There are a few that have tried, but he's just one of a kind and will always be one of a kind. And then after that, managed to see him at Glastonbury in 2000, which was genuinely one of the highlights of my life to this day. It was the perfect weekend. There were so many good bands there, but to see David Bowie in that field, in the flesh, doing that set list was just something I'll never ever forget. Sadly, that was the only time I did get to see him, but I just count myself lucky I was here at the same time as him and got to experience that. And that's about it for my history with him, I guess. I was just a fan ever since. I was like a lot of us in complete shock when he died. It was very out of the blue. We're going to talk a bit, hopefully, about Black Star later as well, because I think it was a stunning, incredible way to go out. And I've never heard anything like that either. But for now, I think I will play one of my picks. So let's start with Station to Station. And it's going to be the live version from that Glastonbury gig, because I was so happy. I think it was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it? They brought out the DVD or Blu-ray, and they brought out the album of it. And I thought it was lost to the sands of time, that. So I was absolutely over the moon. So here we go. This is Station to Station, live at Glastonbury 2000. You have just heard Station to Station from the album of the same name, but that was the live version from Glastonbury 2000, and you can find that album as well everywhere. So we're going to now get into the bulk of the podcast, which is going to be our song picks. So this is going to be a two-part episode. This will be the third time I've done this, because with some artists, they just have such a massive catalogue of incredible music. You can't do them justice in just one episode or with 4 songs each. To be honest, we can't do David Bowie justice in a 2-hour episode with 8 songs each, but we're going to try our best. So out of your picks, what do you want to start with?
Well, I'm a fairly chronological sort of person, so I alluded to where I came into Bowie, and you've played Driving Saturday, so that was the first album I really got to know well. And then as I went back through the albums, the next one, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, 50 years old this year.
Wow.
I know, it seems incredible, doesn't it? And listening to Starman and hearing it in context, it's sort of thought of as a concept album. I'm not quite sure how much there was that, but there was definitely a theme running through. And yeah, the memory is Top of the Pops and seeing him and Mick Ronson just sort of leaning on casually on each other's shoulders.
Yeah, I know the performance. Yeah,
this is a sort of iconic clip. So there are great, so many great tracks on the album, but Starman has a special place.
Yeah,
in my memory and in my heart.
Yeah, I absolutely love the song as well. It's just wonderful. Everything he ever did was wonderful. Well, maybe not everything. We'll get to that. So here we go. So this is one of Q's picks. This is Starman. So you have just heard Starman by David Bowie, and joining me today is Quentin John Burton, QJB. So it's going to be one of my picks next. We're currently going through our favourite songs, and again, I'm going to choose something. A couple of the versions of these songs that I've picked aren't the studio versions, mainly because these versions have more significance to me for various reasons. But with this one, it's not so much the significance of it, it's the arrangement of it, which I vastly prefer to the original. I don't know whether that's controversial to say or not, but it's going to be Rebel Rebel, and it's going to be the version from the reality tour DVD, which I watch religiously at least once a month. It's one of my all-time favourite concert DVDs. I just think the arrangements and the production values, the performance itself, everything about that performance is just absolutely amazing. And Rebel Rebel opened the show, and as you'll hear if you haven't heard it before, it is a little bit of a different arrangement. The original's quite, dare I say, repetitive, isn't it? It's just the riff goes round and round and round, whereas I think with this version, Bowie wanted to maybe make it a little bit different as a show opener, and so you'll hear. So here we go, without further ado. This is Rebel Rebel, the reality tour live version. So you've just heard Rebel Rebel, and you've heard the live version from reality tour, which you can also find everywhere to listen to. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that particular version of Rebel Rebel, or even the song in general?
The song in general, I talked a bit earlier about, what was my first Bowie album, and that was Diamond Dogs, and Rebel Rebel came out a few weeks before the album, and we used to listen to the charts in, I was going to say in German, but I'm in a German lesson as opposed to listening to the charts being presented in the German language. You get my drift.
Yes.
And we had to hide our little transistor radios, and some of us had airplanes and some of us didn't. So we're sort of hiding them under our satchels. And Herr Binns I don't know if he ever sussed out that we were doing this thing. And I just remember Rebel Rebel coming on. It went straight in at number 3. And I just remember hearing it and going, oh my actual God, what is going on? This is just such a... I think the thing with Bowie is always very ambiguous sexually.
Yes,
and there was a lot of sexuality in him, and I think that for a teenager was very important as well.
Yes.
Because you've got your mother in a well. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And it just had this real impact to me, and that whole album does. Interestingly, as anybody who comes to Thunderbolt in Bristol on Thursday, so we're not doing shameless plugs yet, we'll find out the version that we do is the reality version.
Yes, there we go. Fantastic.
The little ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. And we sort of mash it up a bit with the... Yes, the riff is very repetitive, and over the years he's done many different live versions of it. Yeah. But yeah, that's my favourite.
Yeah, fantastic. There we go. Excellent. Right,
I don't know if that's an endorsement or that's a damnation, but it's what you've got.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Right, it's your turn then, sir.
Oh, well, we shall stay with the album Diamond Dogs then, shan't we? Because that's the that's the logical place to carry on. So having been slightly disappointed with Pin-Ups, then Diamond Dogs comes out, and the track that really struck me was When You Rock and Roll With Me, and that was just such a pop song, but it wasn't probably his greatest song. The piece that completely blew me away was the little medley in the middle of song 1, just before Rebel Rebel, as it happens. And I don't know how you're going to get around editing this. Good luck with this one, man. Sweet Thing, Candidate, and then the reprise. It's just such a magnificent piece of music. And Mike Garson's a pianist.
Oh man.
Who is the pianist also on Aladdin Sane.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Again, blew my mind as the way he is. And I've been lucky enough to meet him subsequently, and he's a lovely, lovely guy. So passionate about the music and certainly presenting it. But his piano work on that, and you've got Bowie playing guitar and saxophone, and it's just a masterpiece. It's one of his cut-up word songs.
Yeah.
But it sort of tells such a story, the way he's put it together. And it reduces me to tears pretty much every time I listen to it. So it would have to be that piece.
Yeah, wonderful. So here we go then. Good luck to me with this one. This is Sweet Thing, Candidate, and then Sweet Thing Reprise. Enjoy. So you've just heard Sweet Thing, Candidate, and the reprise as well from David Bowie. That's one of my guest Q's picks today. Very significant piece for him. Right, so moving on, I'm going to choose something now from the latter part of Bowie's career. I love everything, or at least, elements of everything he's done across his entire catalogue. But being, again, a bit younger and coming into being a Bowie fan from the Earthling era onwards, all the way to Black Star, quite a lot of my picks are going to be from the later eras of Bowie. And I think what I'm going to pick now is genuinely one of my personal favourite David Bowie songs. And it's Bring Me the Disco King, the closing track from Reality. But correct me if I'm wrong, he had that song sitting around for a very long time.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, a very, very long time, and just couldn't quite get it the way he wanted. I can't remember if it was Black Tie, White Noise it was supposed to be on. It was somewhere around that era, I think. But it was written a long time before it was put on a record anyway. And I just remember hearing that for the first time. And again, the piano is just absolutely beautiful, just perfect. And I say perfect, it's perfect in its imperfections, because the way it's played, if you listen to, in this day and age, this era of quantizing everything and everything's on the grid, everything's very clinical in a lot of modern music. And this is just very free-flowing. You can hear him not quite on the beat all the time of the amazing jazz drums and the brushes. The piano's slightly off in points of the chorus, and it's just mesmerising. I think it's one of Bowie's best vocal performances. And I think the song's gained extra poignancy in his, posthumously, in his wake. From some of the lyrics, soon there'll be nothing left of me and all this kind of thing. It's just haunting, I find it. And there's a really amazing live version. I don't recall if it's Top of the Pops, one of the, the last Top of the Pops, or if it was from something else. But if you search it on YouTube, there is a live Bring Me the Disco King, and it's even better, I think. Got any thoughts on this song at all? Or Reality maybe in general? Because I think we haven't got many from that album, so...
I mean, Reality sort of, once he went into the sort of last the 2000 triptych of Hours and Reality and Heathen, I was probably drifting away a bit from his music at that point. So Reality, when it came out, I didn't listen to a huge amount. Where that song really came back to life for me was Mike Garson performs it as his solo gigs.
Okay.
And I think, I may be going to get this wrong, I think it's Joe Sumler, Sting's blood, who works with him at those. I may be wrong about that.
Wow, okay.
And he, they perform as a trio. There's a saxophonist, Claire, who played at Live Aid, and he just does that. And he talks about the songs. One of the nice things about Mike is he really gives the stories behind the songs. Yeah. And I think, if I remember correctly, he kind of rescued that song when he wanted to do it, and his avant-garde piano just was absolutely the right thing, and it's one of his favourites as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, great song.
Yeah, so this is Bring Me the Disco King. You've just heard Bring Me the Disco King by David Bowie. Right, it's one of Q's picks next. Do you want to talk about this song? Because I'll tell you what, I absolutely love this song. I was really happy to see this on the list, so yeah.
It was a really hard... Because after Diamond Dogs, the albums are so diverse, and it was great to pick out some songs from Young Americans or Station to Station, which is also one of my favourite albums. I think the next significant thing for me in the Bowie journey was the Berlin period, Station to Station, I think it's fair to say he was pretty strung out on all sorts of substances and was ill. He was sort of getting very confused. There was a lot of mysticism, even fascist sort of allusions supposedly around that album, which, I mean, I think it's controversial, but there you go. And then we get to Berlin, and that whole trilogy, there's so many tracks I could have picked from Low or Heroes or even Lodger. And I just went for Breaking Glass because it has a particular romantic, and not a happy romantic interlude, but I just remember hearing the fractured guitar and the fact that it's really short. So it's I love this idea of sufficiency. Here is a sketch, here is a song, here are some ideas. I've done that. I mean live he repeats the whole song, but it's just a masterpiece in minimalism.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just it does what it needs to do and then it goes, and that's absolutely perfect.
And Brian Eno, I haven't mentioned Brian Eno, of course, and Tony, back with Tony Visconti, who's one of the best producers, I think, of his work.
Yeah. Speaking of Visconti, actually, do you follow him on Facebook? Because I do. He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Love the guy.
And his daughter, Jessica Lee Morgan.
Yeah.
I sort of got to meet a few times. She's a lovely person, she and her partner, and she's got such a voice, got such a talented family. Yeah,
right, here we go then. So this is Breaking Glass, very short song, but it does exactly what it needs to, so we hope you enjoy it. You've just heard Breaking Glass by David Bowie. So we're going to do a couple more picks. We'll see how we're getting on for time, because we are, as I said, going to make this a two-parter episode. We've got a lot to discuss, so I want to split it into two, so we don't want to get through too many of these right now. So I am going to choose probably one more, and then I'll get Q to choose one more as well, and then we will return. So I'm going to go for something from Earthling, just because, again, it was one of the first full Bowie albums I heard. Definitely not his strongest work, but it has 2 or 3 really fantastic songs on it that he still played live up until the end, including this one. Again, saw this one at Glastonbury. I was very happy that he played it. And it is I'm Afraid of Americans, which I just think is such a, maybe fun's not the right word, but it's a fun song to me. And I love the lyrics. I love the original arrangement of the song. But the version I'm going to play is the Trent Reznor 9 Inch Nails V1 remix, which I believe was the one that was released as a single from the album, not the album version. It's certainly the version that you see on the music video. And again, absolutely iconic, fantastic music video of Bowie just being chased through the streets by Trent Reznor, who's playing the character of Johnny from the song. So maybe not one of his most popular songs, but it means a lot to me. I've done it before, solo, weirdly, which sounded really odd. I'd love to do that in a band. I think it's a fantastic song. So what are your thoughts on the whole Earthling period, and obviously this song specifically as well?
Well, I came to Earthling already loving drum and bass. So
brilliant.
That was and to hear him incorporate, I can understand why people who are purist drum and bass fans would not appreciate it.
Yeah.
But there was very much Bowie. He would interpret. I can't even say the word. You know that word. He'd interpret different genres, as he did with Young Americans, which is where I think of the white soul kind of Young Americans vibe, and he's playful about Americans. I think he had a very much a love-hate sort of relationship with America, and much as I feel myself, so many positive aspects of his society, and yet, sometimes it's really quite easy to be cynical about it.
Yeah,
and the whole playful, I'm afraid of Americans, I'm afraid I can't help it. It's, I think Bowie's humour is sometimes missed.
Yeah.
I think it really comes out in the song. And the 9 Inch Nails connection.
Yeah.
Spot on. So I loved Earthling.
Yeah.
And several good tracks of it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Good one.
And 9 Inch Nails are one of my all-time favourite bands, so the marriage between, David Bowie and Trent Reznor was just perfect for me, especially my gothic, brooding kind of teenage years. It was just the perfect blend, really. I'd love to do a 9 Inch Nails episode. If anyone's out there at some point, that would be lovely. And yeah, to see them both on stage together as well.
You didn't see that? Oh no, you said you went to Glastonbury.
Yeah, but I didn't catch them together.
No, I didn't see that stage show either.
Which I would have absolutely loved, because that version of Hurt by Nine Inch Nails with Bowie on is just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Stunningly powerful.
Yeah. So here we go. I'm Afraid of Americans. You've just heard I'm Afraid of Americans from the album Earthling, but that was the Nine Inch Nails V1 remix, which was the single. Right, so we're going to, in a minute, wrap up part 1 of this podcast. There will be a part 2, as Bowie had such an impact on the music industry and had such a diverse catalogue that it would not be fair to only do 1 episode. So before we go, Q, do you want to take one more from your list?
Yeah, well, let's keep going through in order. I suppose after Berlin, Lodger seen as a slightly weaker album, but actually there's so much sort of richness of ideas and different influences coming in from all over the world. And then we come to this Scary Monsters and Super Creeps.
Yeah.
And again, this is an album I think of as mine. I can remember my bedroom and how it was set up and where the hi-fi was, and just playing this album and listening to it. And I go back, and you were saying earlier about different tracks, different days, which week is the favourite album.
Yeah.
But that, even within that album, just preparing, I'm doing a few solo spots whilst I'm over here, and intend, where it's allowed, to throw in a Bowie cover.
Yeah.
And I just suddenly came back across It's No Game, number 2. And if I'd been doing this list today, maybe I'd have put that in. It's just what a fantastically relevant song it is. It's difficult, though, to pick anything else other than Ashes to Ashes.
Yeah.
Not just because of the song and the structure, the 4-time playing against the 3-time, the 3-chord riff playing against the 4-time. It's a masterpiece of Bowie-ness, and the video also is just amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible imagery. He was so good at that, worked with so many good cinematographers.
Yeah.
Video makers.
Well, I'm absolutely over the moon that Ashes to Ashes is on your list, because it would have absolutely 100% been one of my picks if you hadn't already picked it. To me, obviously this is a personal taste, it is probably what I relate to and think of as the quintessential Bowie song. And I always thought, I kind of had this kind of prescient feeling. I was like, when Bowie's gone and I'm still here, and I think about Bowie in my head, I'm going to think about Ashes to Ashes. And I can't tell you why. It just, to me, it wrapped up everything about that otherworldly, alienness of him, the experimentalism. I mean, there's still nothing I've ever heard that sounds like Ashes to Ashes. Nothing, It's utterly unique, and it is probably in contention for my top 3 Bowie songs. I would say I absolutely love it, and I will listen to it until the day I die. And on that note, this is Ashes to Ashes, and we're going to end part 1 of the podcast here. We will see you next time. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Cheers. Ashes to Ashes.